I think all of you can see my slide. So in last two classes, we were discussing about rectangular waveguide and inside how the electric and magnetic field distribution will be for different modes. We also derived expressions for cutoff frequency. So the first part was transverse electric mode. In the direction of propagation, we don't have any electric field components, and we did step-by-step analysis. We start with the reduced wave equation for Hz, and then we found the general expressions for electric field and magnetic field. And from here, what we have seen by analyzing the cutoff frequencies,
Sir, you are
Muted.
we are particularly interested in this mode because in most of the applications we use TE10 mode. And if you look at the electric field distributions, electric field mostly lies on XY plane, and the magnetic fields they form loop and lies in the ZX plane. We also discussed about current distribution, and current is maximum on the broad walls along the central line. Well, after this, you were asked to go through the TM mode analysis step by step, and I assume that you did that. The steps are exactly similar to TE modes, but here we start with the reduced wave equation for Ez since Hz is 0. And we also have the expressions for electric field, magnetic fields, and the cutoff frequencies. And from that, we have seen that TM11 mode, it has the lowest cutoff frequency among these. And if I compare loss alpha C, which is the conductor loss, that is more for TM11 mode compared to TE10 mode because of this magnetic field orientation. Here, the magnetic field again forms loop, but now it is on XY plane and it becomes tangential to both the broad walls and side walls. And as a result, we have high current density and conductor loss will increase. So we also plotted alpha C versus frequency for different modes and beta yk naught versus frequency, which is called the dispersion diagram. And from here also we discussed in details on how this attenuation it changes with the height of a waveguide. So we had a conclusion that it is like a thumb rule. If I decrease cross section of any guiding structure, then loss will increase because of increased values of the fields. If the electric field value increases, then dielectric loss will increase. If the tangential magnetic field value increases, then the corresponding current density will increase and conductor loss will increase. So this is like a thumb rule that if we keep on reducing the cross section, then we will have higher loss. And also we discussed about how the standard dimension for standard rectangular waveguides are chosen. And we see from here that one dimension cover one microwave band. For example, WR90, which has internal dimension of 0.9 inch by 0.4 inch, it can cover 8.2 to 12.4 gigahertz. And this range, it comes mostly from its alpha C variation. So it is suggested that you consider 1.25 to 1.9 times of the cutoff frequency as the usable bandwidth. Well, so next is circular waveguide. Now, circular waveguide, we'll see that in most of the cases, its attenuation is higher than rectangular waveguide, and not only that, the monomode bandwidth over which a single mode is supported, it is much smaller compared to rectangular waveguide. So because of these two reasons, mostly circular waveguide is not that popular. But we have some components or we have some microwave source where we are bound to use a circular geometry. We don't have any other option. So in those cases, then circular waveguides are used. Otherwise, it is not that popular like rectangular waveguide. Now, when we deal with any circular geometry, then obviously the Bessel functions will come. And I think you read already in your first year mathematics. Anyway, for the circular geometry, this time we are not doing all step-by-step analysis. So just I will give you an overview on it. The basic approach, it remains same. That means we have to start with the reduced form of wave equations. So in this case, then we can use the circular geometry. So we have the rho component, phi component, and the direction of propagation z component. Well, so and we can express this rho component and phi component in terms of the z components, just like how we did previously for rectangular geometry. And dispersion relationship, it is represented by the same equation, kc square, that is equal to k square minus beta square. Well, now if we look into two different scenarios, here also TE mode and TM mode both are possible. So for TE mode, then we start with the reduced wave equation for Hz, because by definition Ez is 0. In the direction of propagation, we don't have any electric field component. So we continue analysis, and then we find the final expressions for the electric field and magnetic field. And the cutoff frequencies here, if you are interested, you can go through it. I also, in the slides, I also discussed about the properties of Bessel functions, because unless it is coming, we can't avoid it. And then finally, the cutoff frequencies, it is related to the roots of Jn dash and Jp dash. So it is the mth and nth order root. So we have a chart. I am directly coming to this chart where these roots values are given for different n and m values. So what is n and m? They actually represents the mode number. So number of variation along different direction. So we take the cross-sectional plane, right? So in a circular geometry, then we have variation along phi and variation along rho. So n represents the number of circumferential variation, and m represents the number of radial variation. So along radius m, along phi it is n. Now if you look in this chart, so we have different values of p dash here, and it is directly related to the cutoff frequency, which is given below. So FCNM for any given TE mode, it is Kc divided by twice pi square root of mu epsilon, and this is equal to P dash Nm divided by twice pi a square root of mu epsilon. So mu epsilon corresponds to the material whatever you are using inside the circular waveguide. For air, dry air, we will consider mu naught epsilon naught. And what is A? A is represented here. A is the radius of the circular geometry. So that's how we can calculate the cutoff frequencies. Just put the values from this table here and find the cutoff frequencies for any given dimension. Well, if I compare the values in the chart, you see for n equal to 1 and m equal to 1, it is 1.841. So the lowest mode, it will be TE11, n equal to 1, m equal to 1. So TE11, this is the lowest order TE mode. Okay. Now, if I put this value m equal to 0 or n equal to 0 and corresponding n equal to 1 and m equal to 1, that means for TE10 mode and T01 mode. So we'll see that in the from the expressions that there is no TE10 mode, but we have TE01 mode. What that means? It is not like a square or rectangular waveguide. It is a circular waveguide. So for TE10, which does not exist, so we expect that there will be variation along the circumference, which and along radius there won't be any variation, which does not exist. But we have a TE01 mode, so for which we don't have any variation along its periphery, but if we follow the radius, we have one single variation. So that's why TE01 mode exists. Now, these are the actually expressions for electric and magnetic fields. Now, I'm coming to this mode diagram later. Let us first discuss about different TM modes. So for TM modes, again, the approach is same, but in this case, we start with the reduced wave equation for Ez. Now, you put the boundary conditions, and then finally we have the expressions for electric field and magnetic fields. So here are the expressions. Okay, so if you are interested, you go through the derivation. It's given in details in DM project's book. Now, what are the cutoff frequencies? So again, the cutoff frequency, we have a chart, but in this case, it is PNM. And if you look at the expressions for cutoff frequency, FCNM, that is given by the value of PNM divided by twice pi a square root of mu epsilon. Well, so in this case, it is PNM, and if I compare it with the previous case, it is P dashed NM derivative. So now look at the values. So if I look at the values, then n equal to 0 and m equal to 1 provides me the lowest order TM mode in circular waveguide. So TM01, that will be the lowest order TM mode. Now, if I compare this TM01 mode cutoff frequency, here it is 2.405. With this TE mode, here it was 1.841. So TE11 mode has the lowest cutoff frequency. Then, according to definition, we'll call dominant mode is TE11. Okay, so TE11 is the dominant mode. So here actually this is the mode chart. For a given geometry, we have only one physical dimension, that is the radius of the guide A. Then TE11, it appears first. Next, it is TM01, then TE21, and so on. So it is directly coming from the tables. Now, since TE11, it is the dominant mode, let us spend some time on it. So for TE11, you look at the electric field and magnetic field distributions. So left-hand side figure represents the electric and magnetic field distributions on the cross section, and it is TE. So in the direction of propagation, we don't have any electric field component. And electric field, you see at the center, it is straight line, and then below and above, it is curved. And what about the magnetic field components? Magnetic field components again forms loop, and a part of this, it is on the XY plane, and you see, of course, it will be perpendicular to the electric field component. So once we have the electric field component on a cross-sectional plane, we can actually draw the magnetic field components. And then it goes in forward direction and then comes back as a loop. So you can see this top view or side view, it remains the same. So magnetic field, it forms a loop like this, but over a cross-sectional plane, if I see this electric field and magnetic field, they are perpendicular to each other. Now, what about other modes? So TE11, now I'm showing according to their magnitude, you can see the direction of arrow. So here actually I am just drawing the electric field component. Okay, no magnetic field component. So TE11 is the dominant mode, and for this you see the electric field, it is maximum along a given diameter. Now from that diameter, if you go to left or right, then it decreases sinusoidal. So for next TM01 mode, electric field actually forms half loop like waveguide, rectangular waveguide. Well, and what we see that the distribution, it is axis symmetric. So sometimes actually we have advantage from this, because now consider you are using a circular waveguide. From left hand side you are exciting the electric field in this direction. So right hand side where you are collecting the fields, you have to orient your component in that direction only. Sometimes it can create a problem. But if I use TM01 mode, then we don't have that problem of orientation. So if you have a twist or other things, then it can create a problem for TE11 mode. Now, if I compare losses, I did not plot or I did not represent here the closed form expressions for alpha C, but from this field diagram, as we have we did last time, so here also we can do the same thing. So you see, you recall then for TE10 mode in a rectangular waveguide, tangential magnetic field components on the top wall and bottom wall was the highest. And if you look at the electric field distributions, they are perpendicular to the surface, broad walls, and it is highest at the center. Now, if I look at TM01 mode, you see on metal surface electric field might be perpendicular, as we expect, but it is having the highest component, so corresponding magnetic field is expected to be high. So then for TM01, we expect that it will be lossy compared to TE11. Okay, so we have more current generation, induced current on the metal surface. So TM01 is expected to be more lossy than TE11. Now I also plotted it for TM11 and TE01. So among these four plots, if I ask you, pick up the mode which is providing lowest attenuation. How we can do that? Lowest attenuation. So if I compare this, you can consider this scenario with the parallel plate case. That's why I discussed in details for the parallel plate case. Okay, so for the if I compare this electric field diagram with the parallel plate case, then for TE01, rightmost figure, you see the maximum electric field component, it is not touching the metal surface. So on the metal surface, it is becoming tangential, it should be 0. So similar to the parallel plate scenario, this TE01 will give you the lowest loss among these four, I said. So among these four, TE01 will give me the lowest loss. But if I use TE01, we have to be very careful because its cutoff frequency is much higher. And it is actually exactly similar to same as TM11. Anyway, so that's about the circular waveguide. Okay, we have the plot here. So for TE01, as we expected, you see, it's coming down. It has the lowest value versus frequency for TE01. Now, what are the standard waveguides available in market? So if I look at the values, you see the first one, KU1, KU for K under, and we have KU, K and KA. K, it is in between, KA, that is K above, basically, A represents above. So for KU1, internal diameter is 0.66 inch. and it covers 12.4 to 14.6 gigahertz. Okay, we start from so how this bandwidth is defined, why it is different than rectangular waveguide. So for the left hand side, we use the same definition. So from cutoff frequency, we come to 1.2.5 times, and from that point we start propagation. And then the right hand side of the band, it is determined by the generation of next higher order mode. So if I go back here, in most of the applications, as I said, we want monomode bandwidth. Only one mode should be supported by the waveguide. So then if I choose this region after TE11, so next higher order mode is TM01. So for monomode bandwidth operation, so basically I can use only this region. So it creates the problem. Okay, so I'm representing it by arrow. Yeah, only this region. It will be the effective bandwidth. So this is very small. That is the problem. So left hand side we will start from 1.25 times of this cutoff frequency, and we will go till TM01 mode can appear. So to do that, you look at the chart. So to cover the whole KU band, we need at least 2 different dimensions. And the situation is bad if I keep on increasing the frequency. For K band, we need at least 3 dimensions to cover it. For Ka band, we need at least 4 different dimensions to cover it. So that means the effective bandwidth is much narrower compared to rectangular waveguide. For one single Ka band, we need at least 4 different dimensions. If I compare it with rectangular waveguide scenario, here it is given. You see for Ka band, it is WR28, and it can cover from 26.5 to 40 gigahertz, a single dimension. Internal dimension is 0.28 inch by 0.14. But for circular waveguide, this is not the case. So this is the main reason actually why circular waveguide is not that popular. We need so many different dimensions, and we can't design very wideband components. But as I said, in some of the applications, we can't avoid it. We don't have any other alternative. So here I'm showing 2 popular microwave sources. The right hand side also we can use as an amplifier. They are still being used in different applications. So the left hand side, it is called Vircator. It is used for a high power pulse generation, particularly in electromagnetic jamming. Even how high this power it can go up to gigawatt. Can you imagine? Kilowatt, megawatt, then gigawatt. The power level, peak power, it can go to gigawatt level. So how it operates, just in short, so we have a tube here, circular tube. So inside it's vacuum, no air. Now cathode and this anode, they are connected to a capacitor using a switch. That switch part I did not show. So capacitor pumps up to several thousands of volts, and then suddenly we close the circuit. So cathode to anode, suddenly we close the circuit. Then what will happen? Okay, one more information on the anode. So anode is not a metal, but it is a wire mesh. So we have gap between wires inside the tube. Now when we suddenly close the circuit, this capacitor will discharge, and we have a bunch of electrons coming from the cathode. And since this anode will be at higher potential, let's say a few thousand volt with respect to cathode, then these electrons are accelerated. But since it is a wire mesh, we have gap. So some of the electrons are collected by the anode, and rest they pass through this gap inside the anode, and they will travel forward because of their acceleration, kinetic energy. But when it comes forward, crosses this anode, they will be again attracted by the anode, so it will come back, and again a part will pass through the wet. So we have basically oscillation like thing, and finally the oscillation will die out. So from this oscillation, a part of this kinetic energy is converted to electromagnetic wave. So you know, any charged particle, if it has any acceleration, it generates electromagnetic wave. It starts radiating. The same thing happen here. So it can give us peak power of the order of gigawatt narrow pulse. The right hand side, it's a traveling wave tube. So even in some of the UG book, you will find this, and it is mostly used as a very pure source or low noise amplifier, and some of them are still being used in satellites for kilowatt range applications. So actually now they are being replaced by the solid state devices, but the solid state devices, they can't handle kilowatt of order of power. We still have problem. Maybe we can discuss it later. So traveling wave tubes come there, and noise performance is very good for traveling wave tube. So that's why it is still in use in satellite applications. Well, so after this, now we'll start coaxial cable or coaxial lines. If you look at the geometry, inside we have one inner conductor, and outside it's like a tube, metal tube, and in between it is filled up with some dielectric materials. So the inner radius of the conductor is given as A, outer radius is given as B, and inside we have some dielectric material which is defined by its mu and epsilon value. Now, what should be the approach to find the electric and magnetic field distributions? So first we need to predict what are the modes those are supported by these coaxial cables. So if we do little analysis, then it can support TEM. You recall, if we have two conductor system, then it can support TEM. One example was parallel plate waveguide. So similar to the parallel plate waveguide, it can support TEM as well as TE and TM mode. So all these three different categories are supported by coaxial cable. But now if I compare the cutoff frequencies without doing any analysis, TE mode has a cutoff frequency just like a rectangular or circular waveguide. TM mode also will have a cutoff frequency. But what about TEM mode? TEM mode, it does not have any cutoff frequency. We can start right from DC. So then if I want single mode operation, then it is logical to use a coaxial cables only over that region where it can support TEM mode only TEM mode. So we can start right from DC, and the highest frequency, it is determined by the appearance of TE or TM mode. So we'll see that which mode appears first for a given geometry. Well, now for TEM mode, then what is the analysis step? We can't use reduced form of wave equations. Why? You recall, for reduced form of wave equation, it is represented in terms of Ez and Hz, but here it is TEM. So in the direction of propagation, we don't have any electric field or magnetic field components. So in this case, then how we proceed? We start with the Laplace equation. We will do the same thing here, but now it is in circular geometry. So we have then rho, phi, and z. Again, I am not going step by step. So it will involve Bessel functions because we are now dealing with a circular geometry. We can't avoid Bessel functions. So I'm directly coming to the solution. Well, otherwise the states remain same. So you put the boundary conditions and find the expressions for electric and magnetic field. Okay, so here this is written, but this time I'm not covering it. You see, the boundary conditions are put here. Then we found the expressions for electric potential and then the electric field and magnetic field, just like how we did for parallel plate waveguide. Same steps. So only thing, this is geometry. Well, so I'm coming to the plots directly, electric field and magnetic field, and it is the electric and magnetic field distributions for TEM mode. So if you look carefully, look at the figure. So electric field line, it comes from one conductor to another conductor. So inner conductor to outer conductor. And what about the magnetic field line? So we have two information. One, that magnetic field must be perpendicular to electric field and it forms loop. So if I do that, magnetic field, it forms loop just like how we have for a single wire, current carrying wire, and surrounding the central conductor. So in the direction of propagation, we don't have any electric or magnetic field component. So this is the plot for electric field and magnetic field. Now, if I compare, what about attenuation compared to rectangular waveguide or circular waveguide? So since here we are using some sort of dielectric material, we have dielectric loss. For metal, we have conductor loss. And not only that, if I use the thumb rule, you might have seen for all the coaxial cables, they are much thinner compared to the waveguide. So we will have high loss. We can't avoid it. It's coming from physics. Well, but it has the greatest advantage that we have semi-rigid and flexible cable. So that means you can turn it, you can twist it. So that's why particularly for connections and with measurement instruments, RF screws, they are widely used, even at millimeter wave frequencies. Now millimeter wave cables are also available. Previously, because of high loss, people could not use. But now high quality dielectric materials are available, and we have also coaxial cables operating at millimeter wave frequencies, not at till 300 gigahertz, but till 110 gigahertz we can use it. It's available in market. Well, so this is about the TEM mode characteristics. Next, we are interested in the next Harada mode. Now, we will not go through any derivations. We can't derive field expressions for all the guiding structures. So here just we are interested to see what is the next Harada mode that limits or that determines the cutoff frequency. Okay, so if I compare the cutoff frequencies of TE modes and TM modes, what we see, TE11 mode, it has the lowest cutoff frequency. It's very similar to coaxial waveguide, circular waveguide. So TE101 mode, this is the main culprit here. We don't want it. It is having the lowest cutoff frequency among different TE and TM modes, and the expression for cutoff frequency is given here. FC, this is equal to C by pi into A plus B. What is A and B? We defined here. A is the radius of inner conductor, B is the radius of outer conductor. So it depends on the dimension of the waveguide, this coaxial cable, as well as what is the material you are using, dielectric material, in between these two metal. So epsilon r of that. So here I gave you one example. What is SMA? I'm coming to that point later. So we have a coaxial cable. Here the diameters are given. A standard coaxial cable available in market. Twice A, that is equal to 1 millimeter, and twice B, that is equal to 3.5 millimeter. And in between, we are using Teflon. It's a white color dielectric material. Dielectric constant is given as 2.2. Now calculate the cutoff frequency. Can you do it quickly? Many of you have calculated in the laptop also. So can you do it quickly and tell me the value? Because this is interesting and you should remember this value. Any one of you, please do and report to me. Put the value of A, put the value of B, epsilon r is given 2.2. Then what is the cutoff frequency for TE11 mode? Use this expression.
So 28.6 gigahertz.
No, it won't be that high. Most probably you did not divide by square root of epsilon r.
So 16 megahertz.
No, not again. What is happening?
Sir, 28.6 gigahertz.
Did you consider epsilon r?
Yes, sir.
That is surprising actually.
Actually, a lot of us are getting the same answer.
Then I need to check it, but what I expected, it will be 18 point something, 18.6 most probably, or 18.4. Anyway, so just let me discuss about considering that value, 18.6. So we use that cable till 18 gigahertz because we don't want two modes to propagate simultaneously. So, and now you know what is the reason why all the coaxial cables, they have a frequency limitation. It is coming by the appearance of next higher order mode, which is TE11. So if you know the dimension of the coaxial cable and epsilon r of the dielectric material, then you can calculate till which frequency I can use it. So we keep usually some margin of 0.4, 0.5 gigahertz and take some round value. So for most of the cables available in market, they are designed in a way so that you can use it till 18 gigahertz. So we have a band till 18 gigahertz. So try to cover that band. Well, now the next interesting topic, that is the connectors. If you deal with microwave circuits, so you will also be having you have to handle these different types of connectors, and you should know they have different names. So all these connectors, they are actually different forms of coaxial cables only. It has some inner conductor, outer conductor, and dielectric material. So they are used to connect to different components. You have used CRO in basic electronics lab. And if you recall, you used two probes, coaxial cables. Even though the CROs you used in basic electronics lab, it can support till 30 megahertz. You are doing at much lower frequencies. But we have also microwave CRO in our department. It's very expensive. And they are also use similar coaxial cables. But when we use it at microwave frequencies, the dielectric loss, it should be very small. So we can't use the same thing here. Same cable which you used in basic electronics lab, if I try to use that, it will be very lossy at microwave frequencies. Now in the basic electronics lab, if you remember the coaxial cable, how you connect it, it is the BNC connection, this type of connector. You have to press, then you little turn it, so it is locked then, right? So that is called the BNC connector. And we have another version of it. We call it PNC connector. How it looks here, you see. Now, there are different types of connectors. Sometimes, okay, I'm showing one picture here that I will discuss later. You see, we have microstrip lines. So here different forms of components, and for measurement purpose, we need to connect it to VNA, vector network analyzer. So then we need a coaxial port here. So these are the connect, we call it end launcher, since they are connected at one end. So please switch off your microphone. Switch off your microphone, please. Well, so these are called the end launcher, and the category is SMA. We have different requirements. Now here, in this case, if you look bottom left, we have coaxial cable to coaxial cable connectors. One is male, it comes with a pin. Another one is female. Now, this point you have to remember. What about the thread? So when you are ordering it, okay, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Hello?
Yes,
Can
sir.
you
Yes,
hear
sir.
me? Any one
Yes,
of you
sir.
can report? Okay, fine. Because it shows some network connection problem. Anyway, so here what I was going to discuss means how we call it. When you are going to buy some connectors, there are so many different categories. So you have to first select which category you want to buy. Is it a SMA? SMA stands for sub miniature version A. It is a SMB, sub miniature version B. SMC, sub miniature version C. Again, we have sub miniature version P. SMP can goes up to 40 gigahertz. Okay, so why sub miniature? The first connector types, actually it was designed by P. Nail in 1940 for DC to 18 gigahertz connection, and the according to his name, we call it N-type connectors. So that time no computer simulation or these things were available. It just it came by his analysis. So what should be the ideal dimensions? Then he had to think about the mechanical rigidity, all other things. So you look carefully at the N-type connector. So in class usually I show it, but here we don't have that flexibility. Oh, sorry. Let me zoom in so that you can understand it. Yeah, this is the N-type connector. You can look at the male and female. So this is still being used because of one reason. They are mechanically very rigid. Look at the amount of metal they used. So they are very robust basically. In fact, in your UG lab, we prefer this N-type connector. We don't use SMA because it's very, SMA is the miniaturized form. Now look at the SMS, different types of SMS. These are for end launchers, and here this is also again SMA. So they are much thinner and easy to destroy them. So that's why in lab particularly we are not very much interested, but when we go for system design or other purpose, then we prefer SMA. It is cheaper. And now I was calling about the thread. So you might have learned these two terms, jack and plug. How we call it? So on the switchboard, which is hanging from your wall, the point where you are inserting actually, that is called plug, right? And the thing you are inserting, that is called jack. So we use the same definition here. If this thread is outside, if the thread is outside, we call it jack. And if the thread is inside, we will call it plug. So for example, bottom left, it is a male SMA coaxial connector. So we will call it, according to this definition, thread is inside, so it is a plug. Okay, so when you are going to order, you have to mention coaxial connector, straight coaxial connector, male, plug. Similarly, right hand side, it's just the opposite. Coaxial connector, straight, follow from top left. It is a end launcher, SMA. Now this is plug. You see, right side, it is a pin which will be soldered to microstrip line, and this brush part will solder to the ground plane of microstrip line. And here you can connect the coaxial cable. And actually, in most of the cases, it is female type. Usually, we don't use male type for this one. So for female type, and since the thread is outside, then we call it jack. So then if you want to order it, not this one, it is having some extended dielectric. It is for packaging actually, so that dielectric can go through the package wall. Let us consider this one. If you can see my mouse. For this one, how will what we will call? It is a SMA end launcher. Then this side automatically it will be always we have a pin, otherwise we can't solder it. But this side where you are connecting cables, so we have two options, male or female. So in most of the cases we want female. So SMA end launcher, female, and it is a jack. So you have to mention all this, otherwise they will be confused, the suppliers. So in most of the cases, suppliers, they are not microwave engineer. They will just go by names. Okay. Now, by mistake, I also here included SMB and SMC. Typically, SMB and SMC, they goes up to 6 gigahertz, low frequency. Internal dimension more or less remains same. So difference is that SMB and SMC, they are press fit. They don't have any thread. If you look here, bottom and from left side, second picture. So basically it is a adapter we call. One side is SMB, another side is SMA. Inside we have thread. It is an adapter. So similarly, if I come to 1, 2, 3, 4, this is a straight adapter, SMA to SMB. And now we have to mention that plug, male, female, all these things. This is an adapter again. Right side, top right. So we have, this is actually SMA to SMA connector. SMA to SMA connector, but the first one, it is female jack, and right one, it is male plug. Okay, so that's how we go. So you learned about mostly SMA, SMB, SMC, SMP also a press fit like SMB and SMC. It came late in last 10 years only, but it can go up to 40 gigahertz. So how it can go up? Follow this relation. Their internal dimensions are different. That means A and B. Epsilon are usually Teflon. It is widely used. Well, then this lower part, whatever I drew, all it works over maximum frequency is 18 gigahertz. So here I am showing it in a chart. N-type DC to 18. Then we have APC7. APC7 actually a sexless connector. We don't have any male or female. SMA, then super SMA, 3.5 millimeter connector, and so on. Now for 40 gigahertz, okay, let me discuss about super SMA. So inside SMA, we use a dielectric material, but in super SMA it is air. Now, inner conductor in air, it can't hang. There should be some support. So this support actually paper-like thin dielectric sheet which supports the inner conductor, which holds the inner conductor. So epsilon r now becomes 1, and it is then cutoff frequency for TE11 multiplied by square root of 2.2 times. So that's how it increases from 18 to 27. Here, one popular K connector, DC to 40. Here also you see they used air as dielectric. If you look at this picture carefully, air, you can't see any dielectric. Basically, they are, means otherwise inner conductor can't hang inside. So it is supported by a thin paper-like dielectric sheet inside, and we have plug and jack also here. Now, when you are using particularly these air dielectric connectors, they are very expensive and they are very easy to destroy, because if the inner conductor somehow it is displaced, then the connector is gone. Its characteristics is lost. One K connector typically cost 4,000 to 10,000 rupees. We have also V connectors which work till 65 gigahertz. It costs you will be surprised to know, per connector cost is $1,000, almost 80,000 rupees per connector. And now, if you see carefully, all these connectors, one part is movable. You can rotate it. So the logic behind it is that even for SMA also, you see. Now, why it is rotatable? So here, actually, it is better if I could show it, but I don't have here right now. Anyway, so this male type, it is rotatable. This top part, you can rotate it here. So why? If I connect, let's say, this male and female together, now if you turn anyone, female or male, when the inner conductor will touch the outer, the inner conductor of female, inner of male, when it touches inner of female, then if you turn it, then you have actually friction, and it can displace the inner conductor, particularly for the air dielectric. So we don't want any rotational movement. Then how they do it? You turn just the male one, and the female one, since we don't have any movable part, you keep it fixed in your hand and just keep on turning, so that you have only linear motion. That male pin, it will just fit inside the female. Okay, you have only the linear motion, no rotational motion. Then you don't have that friction which can displace. So if you look at any microwave connectors, not just this one, you have this facility. TNC, N-type, for all of these, except this press fit one, SMC, SMB, or SMP. That's why they are much cheaper. If one good quality SMA costs 500 rupees, then one SMB or SMC will cost 40 or 50 rupees, 10 times. Well, so we don't have enough time. Let us take a few quick questions. After this, we'll continue on Wednesday. If you have any question, please ask me. Any question till this part? Well, some of you, it seems that you faced problem while submitting your answer on last Saturday. So today we don't have enough time. This Wednesday we'll discuss about that. Yeah, someone, you are going to ask some question? Well, so since we don't have any question, we'll stop here. Thank you all.